Friday's first video for you is first news story is from the US, where graduation ceremony at a university was held in Connecticut, and some students from Ethiopia, from Tigray, also were there, who were called on stage. They were students of the university. And when they were introduced, while they were being called on stage, they were introduced as from Tigray, not from Ethiopia. The video is being shared by some activists who say that Tigrayans are refusing to be introduced as Ethiopians. We have a clip for you. Second news story is about a statement by Gata Achorada, Tigray presidential spokesperson. Yesterday, I reported in detail the briefing held by Ethiopian PM office. Beline Siam spoke in detail about peace talks, humanitarian aid delivery to Tigray, and other issues. Before that, Ethiopian Communication Minister Lagase Tolo spoke as well about Tigray, about aid, about talks. And now Getachew has responded to the statements of government spokespersons. What is he saying? Thirdly, we have a new story from a town which is on Ethiopia-Kenya border. Moyale town. It's a border crossing as well between Ethiopia and Kenya. A few weeks ago, Oromo Liberation Army carried out an attack on government forces and militia members in Moyale. Now we have an update for you. It seems that there are fears that OLA could hit the town once again, because for the last 3 days, new measures have been announced in Moyale town. Fourthly, viewers, I have a new story about two missing persons. One is a missing person. Other has been in prison for around 1.5 years. Who are they? Why are they still in prison? Fifthly, Ethiopian diaspora community, especially Amhara diaspora community, is stepping up its protests abroad. We have a video showing protest held by Ethiopian diaspora community in Washington, DC. And lastly, viewers, Ethiopia has been in talks with EU for resumption of financial assistance. EU withheld financial aid to Ethiopia last year over human rights abuses committed to Tigray conflict. Now, EU has not restored financial aid to Ethiopia, but EU has stepped up humanitarian aid to Ethiopia. Some meetings were held, and the European Union has increased humanitarian support for Ethiopia. We have some numbers for you. How many euros, how many million euros will be received by Ethiopian government in coming days? We have details for you. Firstly, Maharishi University is in the US. I think it's in Connecticut, Fairfield. Graduation ceremony was held there for students who have finished their classes, their study there. Tigrayan students were studying too. They were called on stage during this graduation ceremony, and they were introduced as from Tigray, not from Ethiopia. We have a clip for you. You can clearly see and hear that the students are being introduced as from Tigray. So it means that students told university authorities that they should be introduced as from Tigray, not from Ethiopia. Tigrayans do not want to be introduced as Ethiopians, especially abroad. But constitutionally, legally, Tigray is still part of Ethiopia. Tigray is a regional state of Ethiopia. And Tigray's regional government has not announced independence so far. Regional government represents Tigrayans, and it announced that there could be referendum in Tigray which will determine the fate, the future status of Tigray. But Tigray regional government led by TPLF has not announced independence so far. So technically, Tigrayans are all Ethiopians because Tigray is not an independent country. But Tigrayan diaspora is supportive of Tigray independence. People of Tigray as well, large number of people in Tigray, they believe that they were wronged, that atrocities were committed, the genocide was committed. That is why they do not want to be part of Ethiopia. And Tigrayan diaspora, majority of diaspora is in support of Tigray's independence. That is why at this graduation ceremony, students refused to be introduced as from Ethiopia. Watch this clip from Maharishi University in the US.
Ashoshun Teka, Tigray, Computer Science. Ziga Nakash Behani, Tigray, Computer Science. Samson Habratu Weldi Gabriel, Tigray, Computer Science. Zakazib Kadeh Kalalom, Tigray, Computer Science.
Secondly, our second news story is a response from Tigray presidential spokesperson to two briefings held yesterday. Yesterday, we know that Lagasse Tolo, Ethiopian Federal Communication Minister, held a press briefing. In the briefing, he leveled serious allegations against Tigray government. He said Tigray government was stealing aid, that it was mobilizing its people for a new war, that Ethiopian government was sincerely pursuing a peace initiative, but Tigray government was beating the drums of war. Then after that, in the evening, Beline Siom held a press briefing and she reiterated what was said by Lagasse Tolu, and she also said that Tigray government was mobilizing its people for a war. And she accused, indirectly accused TPLF-backed agents that they are creating divisions between Oromos and Amharas. While the massacre was indirectly blamed on TPLF-backed agents and directly blamed on Oromo Liberation Army. She reiterated Ethiopian government's position that talks will be held, but under the auspices of African Union. Now, Getachew spoke after these two press briefings by government spokespersons. Getachew says, we are receiving mixed signals, conflicting signals on war and peace from Addis Ababa. There are so many spokespersons who are incoherent. We don't take untrustworthy people seriously. Now, last sentence is significant one. We don't take untrustworthy people seriously. Is he talking about Ethiopian PM Abiy, that he is untrustworthy and Tigray is not taking him seriously? Or is he talking about government spokespersons? But overall, a Tigray spokesperson is saying that Tigray is confused. It does not know what real intentions of Ethiopian government are. Is the government sincere in pursuing peaceful means to resolve the conflict, or is the government buying time for a new phase of armed escalation? So Tigray seems to be saying that it's confused. Well, I listened to yesterday's both briefings. I don't think that Ethiopian government is sending mixed signals. Ethiopian government's message is very clear. Yes, it wants talks, but it wants African Union to be playing a leading role. And Ethiopian government has been saying for weeks that Tigray is making military preparations. It's not a secret. So I don't know what is confusing in Ethiopian spokesperson's talks. Both are saying that fuel is being delivered. There could be some shortage, but it's not that no fuel is being delivered. Siom yesterday shared some numbers. How many liters have been transported to Tigray? She shared numbers, figures. Fuel is there. It's arriving in Tigray. Yes, supply could be limited. And that is why all aid entering Tigray could not be distributed. But we cannot say that no fuel is entering Tigray. In recent days, fuel supplies to Tigray have improved. As regards upcoming peace talks, there is slight difference of opinion. Tigray says Kenya-Ethiopia should lead the process, and Ethiopian government is in support of African Union-led process. But there is likelihood of consensus because as Siom said yesterday that Kenya-Ethiopia backs African Union's leading role too. So African Union's, Kenya, US, EU, UN, UAE, all can be part of these talks due to start in Nairobi, Kenya. But so far, Ethiopian government has formed a committee to start these talks. We have not seen announcement from Tigray. Tigray has not announced the formation of a committee, which Tigray should. While Ethiopian government has made the names of negotiators public, Tigray should also form a committee. Who will be members of the committee? Will opposition parties be adjusted? That remains to be seen. But at least Tigray should reciprocate Ethiopian government's move by forming and announcing a committee which will hold talks on behalf of Tigray government. Thirdly, viewers, we have a new story from Ethiopia-Kenya border. Moyale is a town on Ethiopia-Kenya border. It's a border crossing as well between Ethiopia and Kenya. And this town came under attack from OLA a few weeks ago when operation against OLA was launched a few weeks ago. After that, we saw an attack on Moyale from Kenya. OLA fighters who were hiding in Kenya, from Kenya side of the border, they attacked Moyale. There was fighting between OLA fighters and government forces in Moyale. Then OLA fighters retreated. For the last 3 days, extraordinary security measures are being adopted in Moyale. We learned through some sources who are there. And they told us that motorcycle use has been banned in Moyale completely. Secondly, vehicles, especially cars with Kenyan number plates, are not being allowed to enter Moyale. Thirdly, thorough searches are being carried out and extended power outage is also being reported. Several hour-long load shedding is being reported. So it seems there are fears that OLA fighters could launch another attack on Moyale. That is why local officials, security officials, they have adopted these new security measures. And we know that a new operation against OLA has been launched after Vellaga massacre. though Oda Turby, OLA spokesperson, a few hours ago said it's not something new. There have been many operations in the past as well. But government forces have launched a new operation. Government openly acknowledges that it has launched a new crackdown on those elements involved in Valaga, and OLA was involved in Valaga. So that is why there are fears that OLA could hit Moyale. Extraordinary security measures are being seen in Moyale town on Ethiopia-Kenya border. Fourthly, viewers, we have a new story about two people, two individuals. One is missing and the other one is in prison, and several months have passed. Firstly, in November last year, a Tigrayan businessman was abducted in broad daylight in Nairobi, Kenya. He's been working in Nairobi, Kenya for more than a decade. Samson Teklemichael. He was traveling in a vehicle when he was intercepted by some unknown individuals who kidnapped him in broad daylight. A video of the kidnapping was shared on social media. I shared it as well. Then we saw a statement, a video message from Milan Haliform Ms. Gabo, who is Samson Teklemichael's wife. She pleaded that her husband be recovered. But so far, Samson Teklemichael has not been recovered. Where is he? Who abducted him? Is Kenyan security apparatus behind the abduction of Samson Teklemichael? He was involved in supporting Ethiopians, Tigrayans, who have been displaced from Ethiopia and who were crossing into Kenya. Was he abducted because of his Tigrayan ethnicity? No answers to these questions so far. What has Ethiopia done? Has Ethiopia took up this issue with Kenya? The man has not been recovered so far. His wife, his children, they are pleading for help from international community. This international community, human rights bodies, Kenyan government, Ethiopian government should play their role in the recovery of Samson Teklemichael, whose whereabouts are still unknown. He was abducted in November. Almost 6 months have passed so far. No one knows if he is alive or not. Secondly, Dori Asgedom is from Tigray. Dori is from Irob community. Irob is a small ethnic group in Tigray. Members of this group live, some of them live in Tigray, Eritrea, border areas. And he was leader of Tigray Simba party as well. After the start of Tigray conflict in November 2020, he was arrested. I think he was arrested in January. 2 to 3 months after the start of Tigray conflict, he was arrested. He was criticizing Ethiopian, Eritrean government's military offensive on Tigray. Since January last year, he has been in prison reportedly, in Addis Ababa, in Kaliti prison. So he is a political prisoner basically, and he has not been released so far. Sabbat Naga has been released. Top TPLF leaders have been released. Jawar Beklegarba, charged with terrorism, released. But Dori Asgedom is still in prison in Addis Ababa. Fifthly, viewers, Amhara diaspora community is stepping up its demonstrations abroad. We have seen demonstrations in Germany, in Israel, in UK, in the US, especially in the US. Ethiopian diaspora community, Amhara diaspora community have been holding demonstrations. A few hours ago, a protest was held in Washington, D.C. The protests have intensified after Valaga massacre, in which hundreds of innocent civilians, mostly ethnic Amharas, were killed. But demonstrations were underway before Valaga massacre as well. The demonstration started after Ethiopian government launched a military operation in the Amhara region to contain Amhara Fano militia. But these demonstrations have intensified after Vellaga massacre. Watch this video from Washington, D.C.
ፈቲሃ ኢብራሂም ሴት የ8 ዓመት የጨቆርሳ ነዋሪ ናት። የጨቆርሳ መንደር ነው ማንሮ። ፊቱ እስማኤል ሴት 12 ዓመት፣ አብዱ በከር እስማኤል 1 ዓመት፣ አብዱ ኦስማን 45 ዓመት፣ ሙባረክ መሐመድ 5 ዓመት ወንድ፣ ሰዓዳ መሐመድ ሴት 35 ዓመት
Lastly, viewers, Ethiopian government officials, Ethiopian Deputy PM, Ethiopian Minister of Commerce have been in talks with EU for resumption of financial assistance. Last year, EU and US withheld financial aid to Ethiopia. Ethiopia is one of the largest recipients of financial aid by the US and EU. EU financial assistance has not been restored for Ethiopia so far, but European Union has increased humanitarian support for Ethiopia and Somalia. A meeting was held, Horn of Africa Initiative ministerial meeting was held, which was attended by Ethiopian, Somalia, South Sudan's, Kenyan finance ministers, and there EU announced to increase humanitarian support for Ethiopia and Somalia. EU has increased this support from 162 million euros to 430 million euros. Ethiopia will get around 81 million 81 million euros, and this amount will be spent on vulnerable communities in Ethiopia. Will this grant be spent through Ethiopian government? No, it will not be spent through Ethiopian government. It will be spent through humanitarian aid partners of the European Union. Somalia will receive 81 million euros for Somalia will receive 125 million euros for state building and 13 billion euros for budget support. Somalia also relies heavily on international support, even for state building, for budget support, apart from the drought and other humanitarian crises ongoing in Somalia. So, Ethiopia has managed to secure increased humanitarian support from the EU. EU has not resumed direct financial aid to Ethiopia, but it could be restored as well in coming weeks. Thank you for watching.